Hello and welcome. You're watching News 18 Global and I'm Poonam Burde. In the second major provocation by China's military in a span of just a week, a Chinese warship carried out what the US military calls an unsafe maritime interaction. The train crossed an American warship bow at a distance of 150 yards, forcing the US Navy destroyer to take evasive maneuvers to avoid a collision. The incident occurred as the American destroyer and the Canadian frigate executed a transit in the international waters of the Taiwan Strait. What then saw was the separation of the Chinese mainland. The strait, in fact, is the separation of the Chinese mainland and Taiwan. Later, in a combative speech in Singapore, China's defense minister accused the United States and its allies of trying to destabilize the Indo-Pacific. This comes after U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had earlier said that a war over Taiwan would be devastating and would affect the global economy. One cannot imagine what the repercussions would be, is what the United States had said.
What you've heard me say in the last several weeks, and especially the last couple of days, I've voiced my concern about the irresponsible behavior we've seen with close intercepts and the coercive behavior that we see in the waterways, and so that continues. And as we were coming in, as you know, you saw an example of one of our aircraft being intercepted by one of their aircraft at a very dangerous distance there, and so very, very close proximity. And just recently, just in the last day, we've seen another incident where one of their ships crossed in front of one of our ships, probably 150 feet or something like that, and that's extremely dangerous. So, I call upon the PRC's leadership to really do the right things to rein in that kind of conduct, because I think accidents can happen that could cause things to spiral out of control. And we all remember the accident we had with one of our P3s many years ago, and in those days, we were talking to the PRC, and it was still very difficult to manage that crisis. Imagine now if something happens and we don't have clear communications, how difficult that's going to be, and what could happen in the short term. So it's interesting to always hear what they say, but I think we have to judge them by what they're actually doing, and that dangerous activity continues.
In addition to such rules, the best way to avoid it is for all countries, especially their military aircraft and warships, to refrain from wandering around other countries' territorial waters and airspace. They should keep their own personnel, warships and aircraft in order.
Aina Tangen, political affairs commentator, joins us on this broadcast on News 18 Global. Thank you so much for speaking with us, sir, here. I want to ask you, the Chinese aggression towards Taiwan is a known fact, as the West would say. So is Beijing's need to keep clout in what is now known as Indo-Pacific region. China, in fact, has objections with that term, Indo-Pacific, as well. What, in your view, was the reason behind this near miss that we saw on Saturday in the Taiwan Strait?
Well, first off, I don't agree with your question. The issue about aggression is really from Beijing's point of view on the U.S. side. If China was doing this kind of maneuver off the coast of Boston or New York or San Francisco, that would be a different thing. But quite frankly, 60% of China's trade goes through these areas. And the U.S. is constantly sending warships through there. It's throwing more armaments into Taiwan. That is the sand in the oyster. So this idea that somehow China is being aggressive about an area which was ceded to it and is recognized as part of one China is just a manipulation of the facts. The U.S. has been involved in over 150 naval actions, including against India in 1971, you may remember. You know, they used gunboat diplomacy before. They will use it again. And this idea that should we have said that India was the aggressor in 1971 and the U.S. was just being peacefully there to make things right? If Russia had not come to India's aid, it would have been a very different story. So don't rush to this idea that somehow it's the U.S. who is trying to maintain peace and that China is simply the aggressor here. This is right off their coast. When India, there was a port of call by a Chinese naval ship, purely scientific, and India objected to it, and that was in Sri Lanka. All right, so can imagine if the U.S. ships were riding up and down India's coast, how you would feel about it.
Well, Mr. Tangen, this is what both the US and Canada have said is as per protocol. It is in international waters and they had full permission to be there.
Permission by who? The U.S. is not a signatory to the UN Convention of Laws of the Sea. There is no such thing as international law except if you accept it. The U.S. has not accepted it, yet it runs around trying to pretend that it somehow is above the rules. So this is what Beijing is complaining about. Why are these ships and spy planes all over China? He referenced this P-33 plane that was there. It was a spy plane, and it had to land. It was not shot down. It landed there because of an accident in midair. So this issue that somehow it's always China's fault is getting a little bit old. The U.S. is playing in somebody else's backyard, and then they're insisting that the person whose backyard they're in is the aggressor. How is that possible?
Now, we've seen the kind of arguments that have happened between both sides, especially at the Shangri-La dialogue as well over the weekend. Now, the ties between the two countries, the US and China, are already frosty, as we know. How do you think this latest incident is going to pan out?
It's not going well. I mean, we're in a downward spiral. I would prefer that they talk. But the fact is, the Chinese, Beijing does not believe the U.S. is sincere. What they are expecting is what they got. Regardless of whether there had been a meeting or not, you would have seen Defense Secretary Austin saying exactly the same things. He's trying to hijack the agenda and, as I said, spread this kind of disinformation from Beijing's point of view that it's somehow China who's being the aggressor because another nation, thousands of miles away, is sending warships and arming an area which they ceded to China back in the late 70s and early 80s.